Dear spectators, please greet warmly our next speaker from Microsoft, John Farmer.
Barack Obama was president of the United States for 70,128 hours. And the very last of those hours, he did something remarkable. He took his last act. And it was right before he was about to step out onto this platform to hand over power in a tradition that goes back to the 1700s, to George Washington. And so I'm going to tell you the story of what happened in that last hour and what happened in the years leading up to that made it possible. In 2012, a gentleman named Todd Park, he was the Chief Technology Officer of the United States. I was the Senior Advisor for Innovation. And working in the White House, we decided to invest our time and our energy in something that we called the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program. And the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program was an idea. It was an idea that we could take the best practices of the startup community and bring them into government and apply them to government problems and make change happen in months, not years. We wanted to make government more effective, more efficient. We wanted to help support job growth in the private sector. And we wanted to do this by bringing in talented people, entrepreneurs, innovators, technologists, data scientists, and team them up with great civil servants inside government agencies to make progress, to make it quickly, and to make it measurable. So that was in 2012. That's just 5 years ago. But a lot's happened since then. After 6 months, the first Presidential Innovation Fellows had proven that this approach worked. It was effective. They were able to save 30% on procurement through a project called RFP-EZ. RFP-EZ opened up the procurement process to more small businesses. 30% is a lot of money when you're talking about a federal IT spend of $80 billion per year. They also opened up data, fueled small businesses. And through Blue Button, they empowered people with their own health data. And one beneficiary of Blue Button is Randy Watson, a Vietnam veteran with a history of heart attacks. Randy had another heart attack, but because he had a printout of his Blue Button health information that he'd been able to get through this program, a doctor said to him when he woke up in the hospital, "You probably wouldn't be here today without that, because I would have given you a medication that would have interacted badly with the medication you're already on, and I had no way to know except for the fact that you had those records in your pocket." While the Presidential Innovation Fellows were working on these defined hard problems, a natural disaster hit the United States, Hurricane Sandy. And the fellows proved that they were valuable in being liaisons with the private sector, with the tech companies, being able to activate these tech companies to help the country, help the nation respond to this disaster using technology. And so after all of this, President Obama was impressed, and he wanted more of this. So he told us to grow this program, to grow the Presidential Innovation Fellows. But more than that, we realized that we needed, in addition to these special forces, if you want to use a military analogy, we needed a standing army. We needed more tech talent within government. And so because of that, President Obama gave us the go-ahead to create what became 18F, a group of hundreds of technologists within the US government, ready to work on whatever tech challenges face the government on any given day. And while 18F was being stood up, something you may have heard of occurred in the United States. It's called healthcare.gov. Healthcare.gov was the website that was going to allow people to access health coverage, in many cases for the first time, as a result of the Affordable Care Act, President Obama's health reform initiative that's really a defining aspect of his legacy, helping millions and millions of people get access to affordable health care. But the website didn't work. And what we realized was that in the 21st century, if the technology doesn't work, the policy doesn't work. People need to access these services through technology, usually through the web. And so if the website doesn't work, that cripples everything. So governments need the capability, the technological capability in-house to make sure these things work well. And the people you see on this screen are some of the people who stepped up and saved that website. They put their reputations on the line. They didn't see their children and spouses for months on end. And they worked 18 hours a day. Some of the folks up there are people that I worked with. Todd Park is in the back, the former chief technology officer. On the left side, you see Ryan Pichotstrom, who was on this very stage last year talking about the healthcare.gov rescue and how it went down. So this was really the end of my involvement. I went back to the private sector. I joined Microsoft. I started a nonprofit in order to help other governments learn best practices in terms of government innovation. And I thought that was it. I thought that was the end of my involvement. And then last summer, in 2016, all of a sudden, the House of Representatives, one of the two chambers of our Congress, decided that it wanted to pass a law to codify the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program, to make it permanent. And so this was exciting. This was incredible. This was out of the blue. And, very important to note, this is something that was brought up by the opposition party, by the Republican Party. So a program that came about under a Democratic president was actually put forward to become law by a Republican Congress, a Republican House of Representatives. And this passed 409 to 8. That just doesn't happen. 409 to 8. Massive bipartisan support. And so this passed the House. And most things that pass the House really don't go anywhere. So we realized that we had a role to play. So a small group of us, myself, Alexandra Givens, Garen Givens, Nick Sinai, a small group who'd been involved with Presidential Innovation Fellows in the past, decided that we needed to do something about it. So we went and educated people in Congress. We did what we could to help them understand. And eventually, we got co-sponsors in the Senate. And if anyone here has seen Schoolhouse Rock, anyone who's been to an American school has seen Schoolhouse Rock, I know that. They teach you really quickly that there's a simple process for making a law. The House passes it, the Senate passes it, the President signs it, done, you made it. Now, what we realized was that it's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more complicated than this. We had ups and downs throughout the fall, and eventually, finally, the Senate was about to vote on it through a special maneuver where they needed unanimous consent. And one person objected. That killed the whole thing. So at that point, we thought this was done. This was in December of 2016. It was over. We'd tried. And to our surprise and our delight, in January, the majority leader in the House of Representatives introduced the bill, the same bill again. And this time it passed 386 to 17. And this time the Senate passed it as well. So on January 17th, with 3 days left in President Obama's term, it had passed. And if we just recall what we learned at Schoolhouse Rock, we know that it just goes to the president's desk, he signs it, and it's a law. So we were thrilled. I can't tell you how thrilled we were. I decided to go to DC to be a part of the signing ceremony. So I went, after this roller coaster ride, I went down to the White House. I was hanging out across the street, waiting for the call of the exact time that we were going to go in and the president was going to sign this into law. But the call didn't come. So all of January 19th, the penultimate day, the last full day of President Obama's term, we were waiting, and nothing happened. No one knew where the bill was. The House Speaker said the House Clerk had it. The House Clerk said the House Speaker had it. And I learned so much about the process that goes into this, the logistics, the special parchment that has to be used. It has to be signed by the Speaker of the House to attest, and it has to be signed by the President Pro Tem of the Senate. None of this stuff was taught to you by Schoolhouse Rock, but it's real. So after all this waiting, I was ready to go back to New York when I got a text message. They had found it. They'd found the bill. It had been signed. It was ready to go, but no one was left in the White House because the president's term was almost over. Only hours were left. No one was still working. Roads were closed. Police were setting up for the inauguration the next day. And so the question was, how could we get the bill from the Capitol over to the White House? I woke up at dawn on Friday with just hours left in the president's term, started making phone calls, but they were all dead ends. I was texting, I was emailing, but nothing was going through. Little by little, everyone was losing hope. Everyone was saying, we tried, it's just too late, we ran out of time. And finally, I reached the House Clerk, and they said, yes, I have the bill right here in front of me. And after a couple more hours of trying, I reached the Speaker of the House and his office, and they said, yes, we're happy to let the president sign it, we just don't know how to get it there, because the problem was logistics. What should have been a 12-minute trip was impossible because the roads were all closed. So on the phone with the Speaker of the House's team, I said, well, wait a second. you're in the US Capitol, right? And they said, yes. And I said, and the bill is in the US Capitol? Yes. Well, the president's coming to the US Capitol for the inauguration. Can he just sign it in a hallway or in a holding room? And they said, well, sure, he's the president, he can do whatever he wants. And so I said, hold that thought. And I needed to get in touch with the West Wing, with the president's team. But remember, no one was left. And I remember I'd played poker a few years earlier with one of the president's top advisors. And I had his email address, so I dug it out and I found it, and I emailed him, and within 5 minutes, he put me in touch with the people who were still on the staff, who were still doing the operations, and within 5 more minutes, we'd put them in touch with people in the House. The president's team was in touch with the House team. They promised it was going to get done. And at that point, everything went dark. I was still sitting on my sister's couch after hours of emailing and texting, and I was watching TV like everyone else, hoping this was going to go through, hoping there wasn't a delay. And at 11:07 a.m., 53 minutes before he officially ended his term, Barack Obama signed the Presidential Innovation Fellows into law so that it would exist in perpetuity. And I learned a few lessons here. Number one, Schoolhouse Rock lied to us. It's a lot harder than it looks. Number two, it takes a team. A whole team of people made this program successful. A whole team of people worked together to get this to the finish line. And the last thing I learned is that when institutions fail, and they do, institutions fail, individuals need to step up. And even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels like you're going outside your lane, like you might get in trouble, because really this isn't your job, this is somebody else's job. But in those moments when an institution is not working, you need to do it anyway. You need to push through, because if we want to see progress happen, that's what it takes. It takes people making a choice to dedicate themselves and make it happen. And I think this is a fitting coda, a fitting capstone to Barack Obama's time in office, that a program to make government work better, that was supported in a bipartisan nature, is the last thing that he did as President of the United States. Thank you so much.